Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities, meeting number 14. Pursuant to Standing Order 81-4, Main Estimates 2009-2010, votes 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, and 75 under Transport referred to the committee on Thursday, February 26, 2009. Joining us today, we have the Honourable John Baird, Minister of Transport, Infrastructure and Communities, the Honourable Rob Merrifield, Minister of State for Transport, and joining us at the table from the Department of Transport, Mr. Mark Gregoire, Assistant Deputy Minister, Safety and Security, Andre Morency, Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate Services, Louis Ranger, Deputy Minister, Deputy Minister's Office, and joining us also from Infrastructure Canada, Mr. David Clough. He is the Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate Services Branch and Chief Financial Officer, and Mr. John Forster, Assistant Deputy Minister, Policy and Communication Branch. And as stated, and as we know, we're here to talk about the estimates, so I will open the floor. Mr. Volpe, on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we have a time-honored tradition in committee about where to go first. But first, let me welcome the minister back. I understand he's had some medical issues over the course of last week, and welcome the other minister, Mr. Merrifield. Thank them both. Since we're very accustomed to meeting the two of them, we know them well. I'm wondering whether both ministers would agree to just simply go to question and answer on the issues, right, and forego the opportunity to regale us with introductory speech.
Mr. Baird?
I'd be pleased if you want to go from 90 minutes to 80. I would be pleased to acquiesce.
Well, we've already gone from 2 hours to an hour and a half, so
you'll get a great speech.
We'll open the floor to Mr. Baird for his opening comments and then immediately go to questions.
We're starting now.
Starting now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Committee members, I'm very pleased to be here today with my Cabinet colleague, Rob Merrifield, and you've already done me the pleasure of introducing our officials from both Transport Canada and Infrastructure Canada. I also want to tell you that we're looking into the Brandon Airport project, which I know you've been working hard on. I want to begin by thanking the committee for its work over the past several months. A number of important pieces of legislation, such as Bill C-9, the Transportation of Dangerous Goods Act, and Bill C-3, the Arctic Waters Pollution Prevention Act, have progressed through this committee since February of this year. I appreciate the time and effort that each of you put into this achievement. We're here today to facilitate discussion and to help answer any questions you may have regarding the main estimates for both transport and infrastructure. The actions taken by our government through the spending outlined in the estimates are contributing to a cleaner air, water and safer roads and more prosperous and livable communities. We are focusing our efforts on key actions and key infrastructure investments that will stimulate the economy, create jobs and support Canadian families. The 2009-10 main estimates show significant investments through Transport Canada and Infrastructure Canada in the upcoming year when our economy will need them the most. And we are working collaboratively with provincial, territorial and municipal governments to help ensure that there are 3 times more money flowing into the economy for more projects and more jobs. We have accomplished a great deal since the meeting of First Ministers in January. At that meeting, we agreed to a 5-point action plan to accelerate infrastructure investments. In keeping with this plan, we've amended the Navigable Waters Protection Act, reduced duplication of federal and provincial environmental assessments, and streamlined our own federal approval processes. Our government, led by Prime Minister Stephen Harper, is also delivering on our economic action plan to stimulate economic growth, create jobs, and support Canadian families. Within weeks of the budget being tabled, we approved more than 500 projects valued at $1.5 billion in small communities in various parts of Canada. We announced major projects with a total federal contribution of almost $1 billion, $980 million to be exact, that include the Evergreen Transit Line in the great city of Vancouver, the Edmonton Southwest Ring Road, GO Transit improvements in the province of Ontario, and the expansion of a drinking water facility in Lévis, Quebec. And we have flowed over $307 million to provinces and territories under the Provincial Territorial Base Initiative. I would also note that when this new fiscal year began, we accelerated the first payments to cities of the federal gas revenue transfer. The first payment was issued within days of the start of the fiscal year. We will flow another $1 billion to municipalities later this year because, as I'm proud to say, this fund has now doubled to $2 billion per year. It will remain at that level beyond 2014 when it becomes a permanent measure. Municipalities across the country will benefit from this additional funding now and for years to come. The Canadian Federation of Municipalities recently noted that the Government of Canada and all parliamentarians deserve recognition and thanks for their ongoing support and for the working partnership that have forged with Canadian municipalities. Our Economic Action Plan made available nearly $12 billion federal dollars in new infrastructure stimulus funding over 2 years. This includes infrastructure funds, for which I am responsible, the $4 billion Infrastructure Stimulus Fund and the $1 billion Green Infrastructure Fund, and accelerated payments under the Provincial Territorial Base Fund. I have to tell you that we are working incredibly well with our provincial partners to help maximize those investments. I cannot put too fine a point on this. Premier McGuinty of Ontario, Premier Gordon Campbell of British Columbia, Premier Gary Doer of Manitoba, and Premier Charest of Quebec. They are among those who are showing leadership in Canada's collective response to the global economic crisis. They are responding to the call for governments to put aside partisanship and political games and work collectively for the benefit of Canadians and for job creation and our economy. There are several examples I'd like to cite. Recently, my Ontario counterpart, Minister George Smithman, and I sent a joint letter to Ontario municipalities outlining our nonpartisan approach to infrastructure development and the importance of these significant investments as a stimulus to our economy. We are working in lockstep to fully allocate the community's component funding under Building Canada. Strong provincial partnerships also allow us to put Infrastructure Stimulus Fund into action. We're providing more than $100 million from this fund to British Columbia communities' infrastructure projects. Dans la province de Québec, on a lancé une
In Quebec, we have launched a $700 million joint program for water and sewer rehabilitation.
Stimulus fund applications, which are due by the end of this week. Under our Building Canada plan, the Provincial Territorial Base Fund was established to provide predictable funding of $25 million over 7 years, with a total of $175 million per jurisdiction by 2014. We will be accelerating this funding where provinces and territories can match it by working to provide the $175 million over the next 2 years, and we've got great pickup from that around the country. I'm also happy to say that several are taking advantage of this and investing more money into the economy as a whole. Another major priority of this portfolio is to ensure that our transportation system is safe and secure. I'm pleased to report to the committee that following the most recent Auditor General's report, the chapter on national security, an agreement was signed between Transport Canada and the RCMP. This will expand criminal background checks for transportation security clearance applicants to include more intelligence data from more sources. This will allow us to better beat back criminals who may attempt to infiltrate our airports and keep Canadian travellers secure. As a trading nation, the importance of ensuring that Canada has an economically effective and efficient transportation system cannot be understated. We're focused on ensuring that this is the case while we work to ensure that the stimulus projects can be implemented quickly to get shovels in the ground and jobs created. These strategic and targeted investments will provide a much-needed shot in the arm of the Canadian economy. The main estimates before us are directly linked to addressing the economic challenges that confront our nation, and indeed all nations. And I look forward to chatting with you today, and I turn it over to Minister Merrifield.
Yeah, I'll keep my comments very, very short because you are indeed looking forward to questions. I spent a considerable amount of time on committees, and I know full well the work you do and how important it is to Canadians and on behalf of Parliament. So I just want to reinforce with you my part of the responsibility in the transportation portfolio. We have the 15 Crown corporations, everything from Canada Post to Via Rail, on and on, Marine Atlantic and many others. I'm not going to name all 15. I think you're familiar with them. I also, within the portfolio, assist Mr. Baird more directly on the infrastructure file. We in charge of Alberta and Saskatchewan infrastructure and work very closely with the provinces to be able to get the money going, get the Canadians working into make sure that we get shovel-ready projects that are really indeed going to contribute to our infrastructure long-term for the country. So I want to highlight that we're here to talk about the estimates today. I just want to make note also of our action plan, some of the significant numbers of dollars that you'll see in the fall estimates, but it is important for you to consider as we discuss some of the issues this afternoon. CATSA, $282 million in our action plan over the net 2 years to improve air traffic and air safety, safety of travel in Canada. We're looking forward to implementing this initiative by the government very, very quickly. Via rail is a $407 million. I believe last time we were here we talked about that a little bit with regard to making sure that we keep our rolling stock safe, but also contribute to the speedy and efficient use of the VIA system across this country. Rail safety is also, I want to highlight just significantly the number of dollars, $72 million towards rail safety and grade crossing improvements, as well as enhanced regulatory oversight and enforcement. $72 million. We're looking forward to implementing that as well. Marine Atlantic also was able to be in Atlantic Canada to be able to launch officially a new vessel Atlantic Vision, and you might want to take note of how that will improve the service there in the long term. So we're really about keeping Canadians safe, whether it's air, rail, or bridges, stimulating our economy and working on behalf of Canadians. We're looking forward to any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Volpe, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to share my time with Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Baird, or Minister Baird, I'm wondering if we can turn our attention to the estimates. And I noticed that under the airport's capital assistance program, the amount of funds available has actually dropped from $49 million to $36 million in a period where we're trying to create jobs, as you so determined in your presentation. How would you justify cutting about 256 jobs with this reduction? Mr. Baird.
I'll ask my. I'll tell you, we are funding under the Economic Stimulus Fund $4 billion, and under the Building Canada program. Airports are eligible categories. I'm happy to ask my deputy to respond to the specific nature of your question with respect to.
But he's not responsible for answering questions in the House, so I'm wondering if I can just focus on you. Would you mind?
We're not in the House,
so
it's all good.
How do you justify the loss of 256 jobs with this cut?
If I may, this is a 5-year program. It's fully funded. It varies from one year to another just because of the variations in demand, but over time we average the full amount of $38 million a year. So there may be some slight fluctuations, but we certainly spend the full amount, and frankly the program is always oversubscribed, and we manage to stage the work so that it eventually gets done. Well,
let me try a second question along the same theme, because part of your presentation talked about security, and yet I noticed that again in the estimates, the Marine Security Contribution Program has collapsed by a further $16 million this year. So does that mean that we're not as concerned about security? And what about those other 300 jobs that go with it?
I can tell you that there's obviously significant responsibilities that the federal government has with respect to marine security. There are also significant amount of responsibilities that the private sector has in for-profit operations with respect to their requirement that they operate in a secure environment. We have provided some support, particularly in the department, particularly over the last 6.5, 7 years. But there are also all responsibilities that the private sector has, and I can ask my Assistant Deputy Minister for Safety and Security, Marc Gregoire, to respond specifically to the question you have with respect to the allocation on marine security.
Well, I'm wondering if you can wait for a moment for me, because the third theme that you touched on is the Clean Air Program. And the Clean Air Program, I noticed, has gone from $205 million in the last budget to $34 million in these estimates. Now, you were the Minister of the Environment when the allocation was $205 million for transport. Now you're the Minister of Transport. We've reduced down to $34 million and $25 million in this next year. Has that become less significant for you now that you're the Minister of Transport?
I strongly believe in a polluter pays principle. I don't think that taxpayers should have to subsidize industry to clean up their act, that I believe that the polluter, that person who is profiting from polluting our environment, should be responsible for accepting the responsibility for their actions, and they, rather than middle-class families, should have to pay to clean the air.
So that's good. So that means you have a list of those polluters that you've identified because you were able to cut the funds from 205 to 34, knowing who the polluters were. Well, are you going to provide that for this committee?
Every registered marine vehicle, every registered aeronautic.
So they're all polluters.
Everything that emits carbon is a polluter.
So
yes.
if we got regulations in place to start collecting that money.
We don't. The government doesn't have to take money into the Consolidated Revenue Fund. We can, through a variety of means, regulatory, through memorandums of understanding, through agreements, we can facilitate action. I just don't think that every single action has to come from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. I believe in polluter pays. When I was Minister of the Environment, it was one of the things that we tried to do. For example, one of the things we did is we eliminated the tax subsidies that the previous Liberal government had given to the oil sands, and rather we said that the oil sands should have to clean up their own act.
Mr. Baird, in the estimates, I notice here that you've got a great interest in transit strategy, and there's a line here for contribution to regional municipality of Durham for long-term transit strategy, but it's only for $1.881 million. Does that indicate that some members around the cabinet table have greater weight than others?
Certainly.
That's the Minister of Finance, I think, who probably put that in, is it not?
It could have been the Minister of International Cooperation. I can tell you that we provide a variety of supports to municipal transit authorities. We generally are not in the business of operational funding. By and large, it's capital funding.
But all that's happening right now is just simply a consultation period for the next 50 years. So it's like $2 million for the Minister of Finance's riding.
Well,
point of order.
This is the third time that Mr. Volpe, with respect, has cut off the minister during an answer. I would ask if he's going to ask the question, at least he could wait for the answer.
Okay, well,
thank you for that comment.
Sorry, I'm usually.
I won't penalize your time, but I think you have to give the minister.
I'm usually very courteous, so what I'll do is I'll apologize for being discourteous. So let me go immediately to the next question. Let me go to the very next question, then, Mr. Baird, because we're talking about putting shovels in the ground and doing the work that needs to be done. You asked the House for approval to spend money. The House gave you the authority, and especially under Vote 35, which allows you to circumvent the usual process. Now, how many times did you use Vote 35 in allocating the funds required for the programs you outlined, and which ones were they?
I'd encourage you to speak with the President of the Treasury Board. He administers Vote 35, as you know.
So you don't have a list? And you've never used it?
I would encourage you to speak to the President of the Treasury Board, who would be better able to define that. One of the things we are doing at Parliament's request is going to be reporting back, as we did in March. We'll be reporting back in June, and we'll be reporting back in December, and we'll certainly honour that commitment that we made to Parliament to do just that.
So we'll have that list then, is that what you're saying? Okay, thank you.
Monsieur Laframboise, you're out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for appearing this afternoon. You've always appeared when we've requested you to do so. Last week you were ill, and I wish you a good recovery, and thank you for appearing. My first question is for Mr. Merrifield. Earlier you said that you are responsible for Canada Post. In the operational budget, Canada Post's amount remains relatively steady. You've ordered a strategic review of the Canada Post. In the House, Mr. Merrifield, you said that you would make the report of the review available. Have you chosen a date, or can you commit to table it before our committee?
Question. It is, some three very distinguished Canadians that followed through on the request for the strategic review. I would actually, I prefer to call that a corporate review because that's more closely defines exactly what it is. And we have examined it closely and are very close to having it go public. I've committed to make sure that once it does go public, that we consult with all the users, including the unions, to be able to deal with response from that. We look forward to. Actually, the report isn't as critical as what we do coming out of the report, and we'll be looking forward, very shortly to be able to come forward, so that Canadians know exactly where we're going. Very thankful for the individuals that followed through on this corporate plan or strategic review. Canada Post.
Est-ce que vous nous dites, est-ce que c'est trop tôt pour dire s'il y aura des...
Is it too early to say whether there'll be an impact on the budget, whether the government has to come up with additional funding to support Canada Post? As long as it's not made public, you will not be announcing anything.
It's premature at this stage. Let's get the report out there. Let's get the reaction, do the consultation with Canadians as well as all people involved, and then step by step move forward on making sure that Canada Post is sustainable long term into the future and can compete internationally and nationally into the 21st century.
Monsieur Baird,
Mr. Baird, nothing is provided for NAV Canada. I understand it's an independent organization that has to come up with own funding. You know, Mr. Minister, NAV Canada is currently conducting impact studies in a number of airports in Quebec, Rennes-Rondard, and the Lower North Shore. The airports there have said that an evaluation might be made by NAV Canada, which could lead to significant economic losses in those regions. We know that ambulance aircraft, there might be impact there. Services might be modified with regard to air ambulances. If NAV Canada does not have enough budget, have you provided money for NAV Canada to conduct its studies in those regions? As you know, the previous government privatized NAV Canada. It is not a government agency. It is a private corporation. It is responsible for its own operations. At times, there are concerns that are expressed. Proposals are put forward. For instance, in New Brunswick, and there are a few examples in Quebec as well, and I'm always open to work with the communities and with the MPs in New Brunswick. That's a Liberal MP. So I'm always willing to listen to their concerns and to speak to NAV Canada with regard to their policy. But as a private corporation, they are responsible for their own operations, and we are, as the government, are responsible for the common good. As I said, I'm always willing to work with you or your colleagues. I know that one of your colleagues had an interesting series of questions for us, and so we are willing to respond to those concerns. I must say, sometimes there are economic and public concerns surrounding private corporations, and it's my mandate to work with colleagues from all parties to allay some of the concerns that are raised. But at the same time, the $25 billion are being made available for the Olympics at Vancouver and to ensure security and safety there. But as for the examples you raise, as I said, I'm always willing to work with stakeholders and the communities involved. I've already done that in northern New Brunswick, for instance. Concerns will continue to be raised. Of course, there are economic concerns. There's also security concerns for air ambulances, as you've mentioned, which are a public concern. And sometimes the government can take action with regard to these issues, but we're always up to date on these concerns. My next question concerns rapid rail. I'm sure, Mr. Minister, you know that the U.S. administration has decided to launch a rapid rail plan in order to better serve their citizens. The proposal that was put forward sees a connection to a number of Canadian cities. But we haven't seen the will on the part of your government to really get involved in the rapid rail plans that will help reduce GHGs. As you know, Quebec and Ontario, Mr. Charest and Mr. McGuinty are willing to conduct a study. You've shown some interest, but will the Government of Canada reaffirm its interest to take part in a greater North American rapid rail strategy in order to properly serve all the regions, whether it be Quebec, Ontario, and other provinces? But I would like for our government to say that we're interested. I must say there isn't a specific proposal that was put forward by the U.S. administration, but President Obama made a few comments in that regard. It's not a very specific proposal. There is no fixed date for start of that work. We are partnering with the Quebec and Ontario governments to conduct a study in order to examine the various proposals that are out there. And we'll check the figures. I understand that we're talking about some $20 billion. But we're working with the governments, as I said, and to see how best we can deliver those services in order to reduce GHGs, in order to improve air quality, which is a key priority, but as well to set up a new transportation mode, and as well as to see the best types of investments we can make. $20 billion is a considerable amount. That might rise to $30 billion. So we have to see where we can best invest our funds, whether it was with public transit, investments, joint investments with the Quebec and Ontario governments, or whether we'll work with the Americans as well. And can citizens pay for another rapid rail train network? And
Mr. Chair, and welcome to Mr. Baird, Secretary of State Merrifield. I'm pleased that you could join us today. And certainly over the years I've noted, Mr. Baird, that you're readily available in committees, and I think that's an admirable trait. Just in terms of the Building Canada and the infrastructure stimulation funds, many questions are still out there about the way that they're being proposed to work, and certainly municipal leaders across the country are very concerned as well about some of the conditions attached to them. And certainly, you know, in your letter to the Mayor of Toronto, you say proponents will be required to test the projects will not have been built in the next 2 construction seasons without the federal and provincial funding. Their concerns lie with funds not being funds that are identified in capital plans, not projects that are in these capital plans are not eligible for funding, and that's certainly going to put an extra burden on municipalities in bringing forward projects. As well, projects need to be finished by 2011, completely finished under your proposed rules. These are going to make difficulties for municipalities to come forward with plans and projects that are going to be of a type that can be acceptable and will not, as your finance minister, be clawed back from municipalities through the gas tax in years to come if they don't follow the regulations. Perhaps you could just give us a little bit of an understanding of how these new projects, the stimulus money is being handled?
Certainly. I'll just underline very quickly the gas tax rebate, the GST rebate, the under Building Canada, the base funding. There's great flexibility. Under Building Canada, great flexibility on as far as timing. What we did in the design of the $12 billion worth of stimulus funds is we wanted to basically stimulate economic growth, stimulate job creation in the short term. And we have really three fundamental principles. They're not complicated. Some object. Some are not in agreement. I would be dishonest if I didn't say that. But one is that we want it to be a new project. We don't want to simply say to if City X was going to already do something this year next, that they just simply take out some of their money and put in other money, because then we wouldn't be creating any new jobs. And we want to create new jobs. So that we want it to be a new project, something that otherwise wouldn't be going ahead anyway. Two, we want to create jobs over the next 24 months with this program. We know from the past 25 years there can be great, particularly with big projects. If you're building a subway, it can take 2 years from the time you get the yes on the money to get the shovel in the ground. Well, we don't want to simply say to the unemployed they have to wait 2 years. So we're looking for projects that would start this year and be completed by the end of next fiscal year, which is March of 2011. So 23, 24 months. And the third fundamental point is that we get matching funds wherever possible. We won't get in every single case, but what we want to do is if we can take that $12 million and turn it into $24 million, or turn it into as much as $36 million by going a third, with provinces and municipalities, we can create 3 times as many jobs, up to 3 times as many jobs, and up to 3 times as much economic spin-offs. Many municipalities are having concern. I'll give you an example. As of noon today in Ontario, we've received 474 project proposals from 69 municipalities, totaling about $500 million. So that shows that there are a lot of municipalities which are ready to go and which have funds matched and can meet the criteria. Building Canada is also there on the table for those projects which would be longer term, which would go beyond the March of 2011.
But what you've outlined is that it's going to weigh heavily on municipalities where they can't match up projects to that kind of a description. You're starting now. You're not likely to see many of these projects to go ahead this year if you consider the full cycle that a municipality has to bring a capital program forward, one that didn't exist 2 months ago. So you have a whole series of events that take place around getting that forward into the market. I just see that you need to find some ways to make this program more accessible.
I'm going to, with great respect, disagree with you. Municipalities are up to this challenge. They have hundreds of projects right across this country where they have the money, they have the project, and they are going to be able to go this year and complete it by next year. We will have to turn municipalities down. They are so ready to go in this regard. But it's not all municipalities. Under the stimulus fund, if the YMCA can apply, the United Way can apply, we can also spend it on federal
Certainly, Mr. Minister, some of the announcements you made in my writing, where you announced where the Minister of Health announced the Kakiza River Bridge as a project, that bridge was started 2 years ago.
That's under the building. No, but that's under the base funding.
So when are you going to make the announcements on these new projects?
That's under the base funding,
money?
Which is quite permissible.
Yeah.
Good. You have a minute.
Okay.
I'll be meeting with the minister from the Northwest Territories either later this week or next week.
Many of the northern and rural communities face capacity challenges, funding limits, and limited construction seasons. Are you considering giving these types of communities a little more leeway on what you're proposing to do? If these communities find that they can't complete the project in 2 years, are you going to then take the money back in terms of reducing their gas tax allocation?
No, it's not their money. It's the taxpayers' money. We are asking for projects that can go forward in the next 24 months. I am confident that we'll be able to get more than enough projects around the country that can meet these criteria. There are some, I would be dishonest if I didn't say there are some projects, for example, on a provincial asset, like GO Transit or a provincial highway, where it's 50-50. There will be the odd project where it's 100% federal, if it's in, for example, a port or an airport, which are eligible for the funds. But the overwhelming number will be a third, a third, a third. And I'll give you an example. The United Way in Toronto has got a great proposal with respect to youth community hubs. Roy McMurtry and Francis Lankin have been lobbying hard on that. They can raise a third. They're approaching the province and us. I think we're going to have lots of proposals that we can go. I just got one from your colleague from Thunder Bay, Rainy River, who's got a great project that will help Toronto and his riding that we're currently under consideration. And we will have a surplus of requests, which shows you how dynamic, flexible, agile, and eager municipalities are to help create jobs.
Mr. Bays. And thank you to the minister for being here today. First of all, before I start with some questions, I just want, as a member for Okanagan-Shuswap, and hearing this from my staff, I just want to ask the minister if he could pass on to his staff of the great cooperation communication that they've had with my riding. It's been very successful, informative. We have had timely response, and we've had some great results. So thank you very much for the work that's being done. You know, one of the challenges of getting infrastructure money out, of course, is a partnership, is cooperation, and at the not only the local governments but also the province and the federal government. And I'm happy to say that I don't know if it's just because of the pending election in British Columbia, but the province of British Columbia has really stepped up to the plate and moved forward quickly to get these announcements out. Just want to tell you a little bit about the ground successes of what's happened in our community. I live in an area that the Trans-Canada runs right through my constituency, 220 kilometers of the Trans-Canada Highway and 97. We have signs up all over, projects that are started. People are at work, and between what I call the triangle between Kamloops, Revelstoke, and Kelowna, we have about $200 million worth of highway construction, which is something that we've been waiting for some time, and this is just very timely, and it's going to have some great benefits in the future for my constituency, so thank you very much for that. One of the things the province of British Columbia has done is worked with the ministry and also with their local communities, and they've split out the towns of population of 100,000 or less or 15,000 or less, and they set up, they call it Towns for Tomorrow and Locomotion. And what they're trying to do is just what my colleague, Mr. Beventon, mentioned about the one-third, one-third, one-third. Some of the smaller communities have challenges bringing up that one-third. And so what the province of British Columbia, in cooperation with the federal government, has allowed is for 80% funding for communities under 100,000 and then 100% funding for communities under 15,000. Because you can appreciate if a small town as I have in Lumbee, of a population of about 2,000 people, if they raise the taxes 1%, they only get $10,000, and that doesn't buy a lot of infrastructure. So they are now building a $800,000 bridge because of the work that we are doing as the federal government and the province of British Columbia. So those are great success stories on the ground that are happening in my constituency, and so I think it is working. In that respect, are any of the other provinces moving forward with innovative ideas of how we can get this money out and helping local government, especially the smaller communities, not larger communities? We have.
I mean, some of the smaller communities do have challenges. They can use their gas tax money, their GST rebates, amongst other initiatives. Some provinces have been incredibly quick. I have to say, in British Columbia, Gordon Campbell's government is a pleasure to work with. They move very quickly, and I think that serves people in British Columbia well. Gary Dewar's government, his Minister Ron Lemieux and his government work incredibly well with the federal government. I can say that we've had a great relationship with Minister Normando in the province of Quebec. We're moving quickly. We've managed to put aside politics in Ontario, where the infrastructure minister, I was his critic only 3.5 years ago. in the Ontario legislature. We're getting things done. So we have seen a significant number of examples where people really are responding to the challenge and moving quickly. Sean Graham's government in New Brunswick came out with an infrastructure stimulus, a stimulus plan in December, and are great partners with us. So I think this is certainly, this economic challenging time, we're certainly bringing the best out of people. We do have programs for municipalities as well. The Minister Finlay announced with respect to some loans, very low interest loans. Obviously, we don't have much money federally either. We're borrowing money. So are most provinces. And maybe not socialist Manitoba, where they're running a surplus, but most provinces are running deficits. So we do have a program that can provide some low-interest loans to municipalities that provides another measure of help, which is, I think, good news.
I could report on where Alberta and Saskatchewan are at, particularly in Alberta. We're seeing a considerable amount of interest by the municipalities, and actually what Mr. Bevington has suggested is not what I'm seeing in Alberta. We're getting on our first round opening up in the community component. There's over $400 million applied for. This is money that their municipalities are stepping up, prepared to put their money into projects, and we're getting all set to roll out a significant amount of those dollars into communities right across the province. Saskatchewan, the same sort of thing. I'm not seeing, there will certainly be many more applications than there are money to be able to fulfill.
Just a question as far as the Municipal Rural Infrastructure Fund, for instance, one-third, one-third, one-third. A local government has the opportunity also to piggyback Building Canada funds on that also. Is that correct? Can you just explain that?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Because there's kind of a misconception that when you're in the MRF program that you have to come up with the full one-third. But if a municipality capacity is only a smaller portion, then they can add some Building Canada fund to that to get some significant projects.
In some provincial governments, obviously municipalities are creatures of the province, are giving greater. For example, Toronto, Ontario government has done a lot in public transit, far beyond the one-third, and that is their compétence. So that they're certainly allowed to do that. With respect to the Towns for Tomorrow, which you did mention, the province is picking up additional funds. We're still doing a third, but the province is going farther as it's in their jurisdiction, which is fantastic. We're putting in 21 million. I think they're putting in 42 million. So very flexible. We're certainly open to to be creative, but we want to maintain some fundamental integrity to the program, though.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Mr. Minister, can you tell me how many jobs you've created so far with the Infrastructure Stimulus Fund?
We'll be reporting back to Parliament in June on that.
So as of today, though, you're here as the Minister, and we've had a month of activity. Can you tell us approximately, or your best knowledge as a Minister, how many jobs you've created?
Definitely in the thousands. We'll be reporting back to Parliament.
Can you give us thousands is a very vague number. Is there something more precise? I think people would be happy to have just your best knowledge on this.
Parliament would be happy to have it in June when they ask for it.
This is Parliament, Mr. Minister. This is Parliament in committee. And you said that there would be dollars flowing. Your Minister of Finance said that there would be, in fact, a need to have the construction season utilized. Now, I think it's a fair question. There are documents that could be tabled if you don't have them in front of you. But can you tell us, first of all, roughly how many jobs the Infrastructure Stimulus Fund, the new authority the government sought and got to spend money, how many jobs have been created, and can we get a list tabled with this committee?
Well, if you want to talk about Vote 35, as I said to your colleague, Mr. Volpe.
I'm not talking about Vote 35, Mr. Minister. I'm sorry if it's in any way unclear, but you have something you've called the Infrastructure Stimulus Fund. It's valued at $2 billion this year and $2 billion next. I'm asking you, how many of those dollars have you gotten out? But more importantly, how many jobs have you created this fiscal year with that fund?
I'm going to mark you down as dissatisfied with my response, but we'll be reporting back to Parliament in June. We're working aggressively on project approvals, working aggressively on getting checks out.
But may I ask, Mr. Minister, is your reluctance built around the fact that you haven't created any jobs yet with that fund?
My reluctance is to say I want to respect what Parliament said, and they want us to report back in June. If you want weekly reports, you should have asked for that.
I think that's a deadline, Mr. Minister, and I think Parliament would be happy if you had information sooner. and if you don't have information, I think it's fair to say that you have not yet created jobs, and you might give us a time by which we could expect you to create jobs.
I don't accept your.
Well, there's only one way to disprove it, Mr. Minister. You're the minister. You have these dollars at your disposal, and you're telling us it's not your place to tell us ahead of some deadline that you've done anything with the dollars.
I'm saying we're working aggressively on project approvals. We're working aggressively at relationships with provinces.
Okay. Has that aggression resulted in jobs? That's the only thing I'd like to learn here today.
With respect, I would suggest Mr. Kennedy is becoming quite aggressive with the minister, not allowing him to answer the questions.
With the greatest parliamentary respect, I have a point of order.
I'm listening to a point of order.
Yeah.
Please, Mr. Jean, point of order.
I would just suggest the minister has come at every opportunity that would have asked him to do so. He has answered the questions directly when he's had an opportunity to answer the questions, but in this particular case, he's not getting an opportunity to give full and final answer in relation to Mr. Kennedy's questions, and I would suggest that it would be the polite thing to do to let him have the opportunity to answer.
Again, Mr. Chair, I appeal to you in your capacity. I'm not appealing your capacity as chair, as the member opposite. I respect that the chair's job is to mediate this meeting, not the parliamentary secretary. I'm asking for an answer. I ask it respectfully. With all respect, Mr. Chair, if through some power of understanding you discern an answer there, I'd be happy to go with that. I haven't got the answer. The only reason for my repeating the question is to ascertain an answer, which I think is a fair question. I don't ask it disrespectfully. I'm using my job as parliamentarians, as what my constituents and the role I have for Parliament as an opposition critic to fulfill. This is the only place I get to fulfill it. And with the greatest of respect to Mr. Jean, I have the minister for very, very few minutes, and this is the only time since the program has started. I think it's an appropriate question in an appropriate manner, and I would rely on the chair to uphold my ability to do that.
I'm going to rule that it's not a point of order, but I do think that the minister should have adequate time to answer the question. And from the chair's perspective, the answer that I am hearing is the fact that he is responsible to report to Parliament in June with those numbers, and has said that very clearly. I'll allow questions to continue.
Okay. Mr. Chair, through you, I'd also like to ask then, has the Green Infrastructure Fund, have you created any jobs with the Green Infrastructure Fund as of yet that you can share with this committee?
That's a 5-year program, and we'll be reporting back to Parliament in June about that. One of the things we have done at Infrastructure Canada is we're putting an edict in place where we have all hands on deck to work with provinces and municipalities on project approvals, to reduce the red tape
with the greatest
in the administration. And I'm not going to pull people off to report back on a day-to-day basis. Parliament asked us, Parliament first passed our budget and expressed confidence in the government, and then Parliament asked that we report back in March, which we did, and then they asked that we report back in June, and we're committed to doing just that. June is in a matter of a few weeks, and
with all respect, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair, and through you to the Minister, it's a simple question, and I guess there is no simple answer. I'll forego the Community Components Fund. I anticipate the same answer, and the Parliament has every right to seek due diligence on dollars, and part of the due diligence, Mr. Speaker or Mr. Chair, is the Minister at the committee. Now, Mr. Minister, I'd also like to ask you then if you can tell us where you are in terms of the Recreation Fund. We understood that you were to profile and then put that out with guidelines and applications and so on, and then out to your regional development agencies. Wondering if you could table today the criteria for the Recreation Fund, any documents that support its progress, and so that we can, which is a fairly sizable fund that is also put out there. But I understood your department told us in briefing that they were going to profile it, and then when the rules were established, out to the regional development agencies. Can you table any documents today to show us where that's at?
We'd be pleased to table them as we'd be pleased to respond through the chair to that request. It's quite reasonable.
So in the underlying thing there is that fund ready to take applications? Is that where it's at today?
Well, there is being administratively. We came up with the overview and the policy parameters. It's now in the hands of the regional economic development agencies. We'd be very pleased to provide all the information you requested.
Mr. Minister, you spoke of your people working quite hard, and I certainly, from each contact I've had with them, there's every evidence of that. But I just want to ask you how you see your staff being able to do their due diligence on this particular task, which is more than double the projected spending and perhaps triple the actual spending that you achieved, but at least double, with roughly the same amount of staff. In the main estimates, you speak of having 19 extra staff. There's a different article in the Parliament in the Hill Times today, but here you're seeking 19 staff compared to 2 years ago, and I'm wondering how you are able to get the job done, and what corners may have to be cut if you don't have adequate staff, and if there is a plan that you could share with us on the deployment to make sure that we get due diligence for all these extra dollars with with no increase in staff, that would be very helpful.
Well, we are getting additional resources with respect to staff at Infrastructure Canada. We have come forward with our 5-point action plan with respect to reducing red tape, which can be awfully heavy paper burden, a heavy administrative burden on my department. I think one of the approaches that we take, I don't apologize for, in some respects, being a provincialist. Whether it comes to our friends in the Bloc Québécois, whether it comes to, for example, the province with which I represent a riding in the House of Commons, it is not the federal government's job to micromanage the provinces. Premier McGuinty brought forward at the First Ministers' Conference a binder of some 5 or 6 inches of a business case they were required to do with respect to Infrastructure Canada and the federal rules and red tape. The province of Ontario does not work for me. They do not work for Infrastructure Canada. Our job is to be a funding partner. I think we can have a fair balance between the gas tax, which I know you were a big advocate, that you just give the money as a blank check, versus having 2 years worth of paperwork and administration where we try to micromanage things that are not our responsibility. So I think we're coming up with a reasonable balance. What we want to do is identify projects in concert with municipalities and provinces. What we want to do is ensure that they're eligible, and what we want to do is respect jurisdiction. I have no intention of trying to micromanage George Smitherman and Infrastructure Ontario, because I think they're quite capable of doing themselves, and they are responsible and accountable to their provincial legislature, to their provincial Auditor General. They're not responsible to this Parliament. They're not responsible to me. They're not responsible to the Auditor General of Canada.
You are. Monsieur Godet or Monsieur Lafontaine?
Merci beaucoup,
I have to
Monsieur le
maintain.
Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, my next question will deal with infrastructure, and I agree with you. It took a while before Quebec negotiate with you, but now the agreement has been signed, so it's normal jobs will be created over the next few months. We had to sign the agreement first. Now that's done. One thing, Mr. Minister, you signed with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities a letter. However, in that letter, you indicated that Ottawa had programs available for municipalities. However, that letter was sent throughout Canada. In Quebec, we have programs that are directed from the municipalities to the provincial government. Can we see what types of programs would be directed towards Quebec, and those that could be directed directly towards the municipalities from Ottawa? Mr. Raj? Well, the president of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, a Quebecer, well, we were aware of legislation and that municipalities are under provincial jurisdiction. I've pointed that out, and I also indicated that in question period and in my comments before this committee in the past. In my view, it is absolutely essential to work with the Minister of Municipal Affairs, the Minister of Finance, then the Treasury Board, Minister who is responsible for infrastructure, as well as the office of the Premier. So we're working with them, we respect their jurisdiction, and of course, in the budget, Quebec municipalities have received funds and programs. I'm certain that they are aware of Quebec legislation in that respect. I'm not someone who wants to spend a lot of energy on administrative agreements. We work very strong with Quebec. We sign an agreement. We have an agreement we can use for each project, almost exactly the same agreement. So we reduce the paper burden, and we can act faster with these new initiatives. But I must say that I was pleased of the commitment between Quebec and Canada. Of course, we're spending in federal jurisdiction in infrastructure, for instance, in the ports. And there will be cases where we will invest in such projects. But my first priority is to do the greatest amount of work with Quebec and with its municipalities in order to create a greatest number of jobs. And there are a number of Quebec Bloc members gave me some projects they would like to see me fund in their ridings, and they gave me their priorities. That's all very fine and well. That's their jobs, but I'm working with the provincial government because the provincial government has to agree with those projects. Well, as long as the agreement wasn't signed, we asked our members to send those projects directly to you. Now that there's an agreement in place, that's no longer necessary. I work with all members throughout Canada. Since the agreement was signed in Quebec, things are running smoothly, and MPs are quite happy. Things are running smoothly in Quebec, in Ontario, and British Columbia as well. If I have any time left, I have another question with regard to security, which you raised earlier. There's a rumor that airlines have been putting pressure on your department to change the ratio of airline attendants to passengers. We know we've dealt with this in our committee. Our position has remained unchanged. For security reasons, we should not change the number of airline attendants to passengers. Will you be reviewing that legislation or not? That's not something I've decided to change. I cannot say whether in the future that will change or not, but it's not on my desk presently. I have many other priorities for the time being. But if there are any changes, you'll hear from them. That's very well. I also raised the issue of via rail, which is important. With regard to your answer previously, you said that you're awaiting the results of the corporate review of Via Rail, which you are funding. But do you not find that, because you're saying that you read what the Obama administration wanted to do, but don't you want to get in touch with the U.S. administration in order to realize what type of project they want to carry out? Are you simply waiting for their decision? Or? I pointed out in the earlier answer that speeches have been made. Ideas have been voiced on the part of the Obama administration, but there are no specific proposals that have been put forward. I have already met with my U.S. counterpart in Washington regarding infrastructure projects. We said we were ready to work together, and it's absolutely essential that we do so. That is to complete our study with Quebec and Ontario, partnership agreement, and we have to look at the findings of that report. I'm certain that the U.S. has to conduct the same type of review. But our relations are good. Is a former U.S. Congressperson who is now the Minister or Secretary of Transport in Washington.
Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank both of you for being here today. As you know, this is National Rail Safety Week, and so my question eventually will be for the Minister of State for Transport. I've had the opportunity this week to have some meetings with representatives of our railways, and quite frankly, I don't think that I had been aware quite how comprehensive the cobweb of rail system is in Canada. Being a GTA Member of Parliament, I have the advantage of being able to use our railway system regularly in my transport back and forth between here and Toronto, and consider myself very fortunate to have that opportunity. It is a wonderful, wonderful service we have. I'm very pleased with the investment that is being made in the rehabilitation of the GO Transit Bridge at the south end of Aurora. I live in a community that is dependent on service to Toronto, and GO Transit provides the service between Newmarket and Union Station for my constituents. So the rehabilitation of that bridge is going to really improve the ability for GO Transit to provide service to my constituency and really for the constituencies of all of York Region. I've also had the opportunity to speak with our regional chair, Bill Fish, who again is very pleased with that investment in particular and with other investments in transportation that are coming into York Region. I wonder, though, if you could speak specifically to other investments that are being made, and this is to our Minister of State, to improve safety on our railways. So like this rehabilitation that is going into the GO Transit Bridge, there must be other projects that are going on across Canada to improve rail safety, and I wonder if you could speak to that for us.
Sure. You know, I would agree with you. The amount of dollars that are in infrastructure on the via side of our railway system is very significant, and that will enhance not only service but certainly new railway lines being put in place, new locomotives, more efficient operation. Actually, I think the goal is between Quebec and Windsor to actually Montreal and Toronto to close the time by half hour. But your question is more on the safety side, which we are doing something very significant on the safety. $72 million put into this action plan budget to deal with the safety of our rail system and make sure that we have a 5-year plan, regulations, oversight, and enforcement to make sure that those cars, the freight, the people who are being transported across this country are done, and it's done in a very safe way. That goes. Some of this money is going to be for grade crossing improvements as well as the regulatory oversight. This is significant. It's something that we'll be laying out the plan that this government has over this next year. We'll be aggressively pursuing this and making sure that we put those dollars to very good use and that we can be assured that we have safety as we travel on the rail, either by passenger or by freight. One of the reasons why I have a personal interest in this is what has happened in Wabman, in my area. Wabman Lake polluted. It wasn't passenger, but it was certainly freight. It certainly caused a tremendous amount of disruption. It's an issue that I think all Canadians are very concerned about. Environmental concerns are there, and we need to do whatever we can to make sure that these kinds of incidents don't repeat themselves.
And if I have more time, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'd like to ask a second question, if I may, for the Minister of State. Last year, there was a program introduced in July specifically for our veterans. Many of the veterans in my area were able to take advantage of that program, and I wonder if you could talk about how that program is being extended again this year, how we made the decision to do that, how many people have taken advantage of it. I don't even know if I have those numbers, but be pleased to hear about that program that's in place for our railway system.
Yeah, it was the first time that the program was initiated last year, and the success of the program was really quite striking. You know, it was only for 1 month, the month of July, allowing our veterans and active Canadian service people to be able to ride on the rail free of charge. They can bring, I believe it's up to 3 other family members at 50% rate. 60,000 of our Canadian Force people accessed this service, and I've been around the country talking to some of these servicemen that are thrilled with the opportunity to see this country and to do it in July. It's a great time to travel. This is an extraordinary thing that Via Rail has offered, and they're repeating it this year. But it's actually further than that. We're also extending it not only to rail but to the Marine Atlantic, which is allowing a free vehicle across the Marine Atlantic for the servicemen, up to 5 family members. So it's not only contributing to the families, but also to allow them to be able to travel across to Newfoundland and back to Sydney. This is an extraordinary one because it goes not only the month of July, but it goes from actually May 1 to October 31st. So this is a phenomenal opportunity that our veterans and our Canadian Forces individuals have to be able to see Newfoundland, enhance tourism, and be able to it's just one of those tangible ways that we as Canadians say thank you very much for the great work that our men and women do.
Thank you. Mr. Dhaliwal?
Mr. Chair, thank you, Minister, coming out to this meeting. I'm going to be short and quick questions here. Minister, if the federal government has included a stimulus plan in its November economic statement, wouldn't be more projects underway by now?
We certainly, I think the long history in Canada is among successive governments is that we give a fall financial update, but the new expenditures normally follow in the budget. I think we're going to be much farther ahead with respect to infrastructure because we brought in a budget early in January. Frankly, as well, though, we did a significant amount of work to speed up the existing infrastructure programs far before the beginning of the fiscal year. I think we'll spend, one thing I'll promise you is that with these new infrastructure programs, they will, the rubber is hitting the road and will hit the road quicker, faster, by a factor of at least 10 than any other infrastructure program in the history of this country in the modern era. So we're not going to take 2 years to sign, 3 years to sign contribution agreements. We're not going to, we're not going to, waste a lot of time. It won't be immediate. It won't be instantaneous, but it will be 10 times quicker than any government in the modern era from the moment that we're announced until the moment that we see action on a case-by-case basis. I'm pleased with that. Not perfect, but it'll be 10 times better than anything ever done in the history of this country.
But I mean, you say, Minister, it will be 10 times faster, and can you tell me how many projects under this new funding have started so far?
I can tell you that, for example, in the province of British Columbia, that we announced more than $250 million worth of projects where the green light is happening, whether it's Highway 4 in the west of Port Alberni, whether it's Highway 97 from Cody Road to Australian, whether it's the Surrey Bridgeview sewer system that you have, whether it's engineering consultants, whether it's architects, whether it's contractors, that there's a lot of action, and as every day goes by, there'll be more action. What I want my officials and my office and my department doing is have all hands on deck to give the green light to identify with provinces and municipalities and give the green light to federal projects, push through the paperwork so that the provinces and municipalities who hold the shovels in about 95% of cases can do their work. I am not going to take officials off the job to have a tote board. We respect the fact that Parliament asked for an update in June. They'll get one. The Government of Canada must maintain the confidence of the House of Commons every single day in order to do that. And thus far, we've been doing that for more than 3 years.
Minister, you mentioned British Columbia. I would like to provide you with a quote from your predecessor last year in regard to P3 projects. Just this year, as you know, I'm sure the P3 funding for the Portman Bridge in British Columbia has collapsed. Here is Minister Cannon's quote. We are seeking public funds, of course, but we are also seeking a mechanism through which we can leverage private funds to able to complete it. We have examples. I have noted in my comments that the Confederation Bridge, for instance, 30% of which is owned by a pension fund in this country. It is a private initiative whereby there is a leveraging of funds to be able to help and support and sustain new infrastructure in the country. Philosophically speaking, this is the direction and the intent that this government wants to take. We believe that this is the right course of an action. Given, end of quote, given what we have seen happen with the economy over the last year and what we have saw with the Portman Bridge in particular, I wondered if you could comment in regard to whether your government still sees this is the viable course of an action.
Well, I can tell I certainly don't have any problem with the private sector and alternative financing for infrastructure projects. You brought up a specific infrastructure project in the province of British Columbia. I visited and saw the construction on that project not a few weeks ago, and I can guarantee you that if you were to phone the Premier of the province of British Columbia or the Minister of Infrastructure of the province of British Columbia, he'll say that we have moved mountains in responding to this economic action in our economic action plan, that they have never seen the federal government move so quickly on infrastructure, and that they are not just happy, but if you were to ask the province of British Columbia, they would tell you, Mike, I say to you, my friend, that they're very, very pleased with this, and that's a Liberal government.
So I don't have to ask anyone. I can see the example of this P3, the public-private partnership is clear that this has collapsed in British Columbia, and I also have talked to the municipalities when I was traveling through your Prime Minister's home province, and I can tell you when we talk about the Building Canada Fund, specifically those at the municipal level that will possible benefit from this money. It is not working because the way they told me that the funds as it stands rewards the bad behavior. If you are a municipality that did the right thing over the years, investing in good sewer system, good drainage system, and good roads, and now they want to build, effectively a good infrastructure so that they can attract the residential developers, just like swimming pools, and they are locked out. And can you tell me what the solution is that those municipalities have the access to this Building Canada Fund?
Yeah, I can tell you where we're at in Alberta on infrastructure. I mean, it is actually some phenomenal things actually happening. You asked
to this Building Canada Fund. Yeah. How you have locked out those communities that have planned in the past a good planning, and now they are looking for money for their recreation facilities, and they are locked out.
Well, let me tell you exactly what has happened since the last time I was at this committee. And we're just talking Building Canada portion, not the stimulus portion, and not the PT-based portion, just on the Building Canada. We're talking $200 million of announcements, not only announcements, but actually of these ones that have been announced. And I can just go through a list if you like. There's $40 million to a science center. There is in Calgary. There is $9 million to a heritage park.
Mr. Chair,
by the way, on this one, on the science center, the contribution is done. The construction of the science center is actually in construction. The $100 million ring road around Edmonton. Actually, we announced that in March. The shovels were in the ground on the 1st of April. Gives you an idea that how it is working, and that's what your question was. Building Canada, is it being effective? Are we creating jobs? Are we getting shovels in the ground? I can tell you we are.
Mr. Jean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, ministers, for appearing today. I want to assure you that in my meetings with mayors and reeves and provincial ministers throughout the country, they are telling me exactly what you've said here today, that this government is getting results and getting results quickly, positive results. I want to thank you, Minister Merrifield, in relation to one particular announcement. I see that this government is moving forward not just in investing for today's jobs, but for tomorrow's jobs. And really, I believe that the future of what we are doing as a government is creating productivity for our future. And some of those investments that we're making, those key investments, are the Windsor Corridor, for instance, where a huge portion of Canada's trade is taken to the United States, and how many jobs that we're investing into, not just for today, but tomorrow. And also in my own area of Fort McMurray, which produces somewhere in the neighborhood of 6% of the gross domestic product of this country, where there was a recent announcement, some $53 million on 2 overpasses and a widening of a road where there has been a 4-hour delay in traffic on a daily basis that should only take somewhere under an hour to get back and forth from plant sites. And people will seem to think I'm pushing my own agenda here for my own constituents, but the reality is there's some 35,000 to 50,000 people that work in that area that are from other parts of the country and actually return that money home to other parts, including Newfoundland, most of Atlantic Canada, Ontario. Some 85,000 jobs 2 years ago were directly or indirectly from Ontario, some 30,000 jobs from the province of Quebec. This is money that goes back directly to the provinces and to the communities and the homes in all parts of Canada, and I think those investments were absolutely critical, and I'd like to compliment whoever made that decision because those two overpasses were a safety concern. They were causing deaths and were causing tremendous delays. So my compliments in relation to that, and I'm not sure if you'd like to add anything further in relation to that particular investment.
Yeah, I think way too much is made about whether infrastructure projects happen in specific ridings or not. What I'm consumed with is to make sure that the infrastructure projects that are announced are ones that are needed, the ones that are bought into by municipalities if possible and provinces for sure, so that they're not politically interfered with. Projects like the one that you have described is a significant amount of money in a riding, but it's a riding where, as you've described, people come to work from all across this country. And it's very important that infrastructure is kept up for the benefit of the country. I believe Fort McMurray is around 5% of GDP or a little over. That's a pretty significant amount of GDP from one little area. But not only that, is that you talked about the Windsor area and the Windsor corridor. You're talking, potentially $1 billion of trade a day goes across that border at peak times. That's significant. Minister Baird, myself, were able to talk to Secretary LaHood with regard to making sure that we can do what we can to be able to move, traffic along in cross border as well. And it's got nothing to do with politics, right, left, or anywhere in between. This is about building Canada to be able to compete in the 21st century. And if we do this right, and nobody likes going into debt, but if we do it right, we will be able to come out of this when the economy turns around, much stronger, much better, more able to compete internationally, and that's, in my view, the way to succeed in the future in the 21st century.
Thank you, Minister Merrifield. I also am interested in what's happening in Atlantic Canada because many of my constituents are, quite frankly, from Atlantic Canada and return there. And Marine Atlantic in particular, some of the capital possibilities. Is this government looking or potentially investigating capital funding in Marine Atlantic and some of the expansion of facilities there for the people of Atlantic Canada?
Yeah. Well, I was just to Atlantic Canada, visiting Sydney. Actually, I've been there twice. Once earlier to sort of kick the tires of Marine Atlantic as I got, as a part of my portfolio to understand a little bit of their difficulties. Because this last year, I'll be honest with you, when you only have a success rate of 10% on being on time, that's not good enough as far as I'm concerned. It has to be changed. So we were over looking at how we can improve the service for the people of Newfoundland and North Sydney's. I'm pleased to announce that we were able to launch a new vessel. This new vessel has 40% more capacity. Is a tremendous vessel that should be the pride of their fleet for sure and the pride of Canada. It really is a phenomenal vessel. That will give us an opportunity to be able to enhance service in that area that will really will make a significant difference. When I talk to the captain of this ship, he tells me that going through the ice is something that is much better than any of the vessels in the fleet. Is performing above their expectation, but they do need some work. Marine Atlantic does need some infrastructure work, both on both shores, both in North Sydney as well as in Newfoundland side, and Port aux Basques and some other areas. I'm not trying to underplay what the ship will do. It does need some more attention, and we're hoping that we'll be able to work hand in glove with Marine Atlantic. I know the board is really working hard to try to provide the service.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I know I only have a minute. Would I be able to turn it over to Mr. Watson for a question? You did have one in particular.
20 seconds if you can get it done.
Upgrades to the Via Rail Station in Windsor. I know obviously that's the source of some there's some negotiation around that. Are we getting close to some agreement on that and moving forward on that particular issue?
Mr. Watson's trying to preempt an announcement or something. I don't know. I can tell you that there's $407 million into enhancing the rail service, and we'll be doing improvements all along the line there. I can't tell you at the present time specifically what we're doing in that station, but I can say that I believe Canadians should be very proud of what we're doing to enhance service in that area, and you're probably very pleased as well.
Thank Thank you, and that does complete the... I have a question, if I may. I'm just interested, and I've heard it raised from members of this committee, but also other members of Parliament. The $2 billion fund that's set up to assist, I'm assuming, smaller municipalities and jurisdictions. Can you just very briefly tell me how that, like, if I'm a municipality that's been approved of a Building Canada fund, but I'm short on my third, is there an application process, or is that done prior to your approval of the Building Canada?
You want to take it or the Diane Finley, the Minister of Human Resources and responsible for CMHC, takes the lead responsibility for that. So I'd encourage you to contact her. She'll give you all the details that you or the municipalities in your constituency would need. I think one of the things that the Prime Minister did is ensure that HRSDC is doing a significant amount of work on the stimulus. So too is Industry Canada. So too is our department. So too are the regional economic development agencies to ensure that we can spread the workload and make sure we can get the job done, which I think was a wise decision. For example, Mr. Finley does the significant investments in housing, and Minister Clement and Goodyear are doing significant investments in post-secondary education capital, which is good.
So I should talk to Madam Finley. Okay, we are wrapping up, but I think I'm going to go around the table again and offer 3 minutes to each member or each party, and then we'll see where the clock is. Mr. Kennedy.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Minister, just with respect to the year finished and referenced in estimates, what tally of jobs do you have for what was great? We know that you underspent last year by about $1.3 billion based on your estimates, but in terms of jobs, can you tell us what you created in terms of actual jobs, and how much of that could you table with us today in terms of the outcomes of those, not the stimulus fund, you sort of responded to that, but on the other programs, I guess they're all emanating from the 2007 budget.
Well, certainly anything we have, we'd be happy to table with the committee.
I'm sorry?
Certainly anything we have, we'd be pleased to table with the committee.
Is there anything you can discuss with us today? This is, again, for expenditures that's already finished, so I guess we would have a better handle on that than the ones that haven't been spent yet.
I guess Building Canada, the first objective was infrastructure. The stimulus, the first objective is short-term job creation. So they're different, obviously.
No, I understand, but I'm saying money was spent and you're looking for more. We're supposed to concur here or not in the estimates, and you're saying, and we're looking for outcomes here. We know you underspent as one outcome, but the money you did spend, surely you have a handle on what it did generate. And could we get the jobs? And also, would it be possible to table the stages? Because we've had a number of projects announced, but in other words, there is a stage where there's an actual contract, or as you call it, an agreement with the entity, whether it's a province or municipality and so on. And then there's a stage in which they actually start construction, and then there's a stage in which they invoice you and money actually flows. And I think if everyone knows, only 5% of the money from your new programs flowed last year. So I think it's fairly essential on the due diligence part, not to interfere with the operations, but can you generate a list for us? Your staff referenced this in committee that such a thing was possible, that tells us where the projects are under this would be a standard for all funds, where they are at, where they've been announced politically or in the news release, when they're actually, agreements signed, and therefore they can go ahead, and then when the actual project is in progress, and then further when you're starting to pay on that project, because obviously you've underspent quite a bit in the last few years, and it would be, I think, helpful for the public to see the stages at which Infrastructure Canada projects are at, both for existing, the proposed extensions of the existing programs, and the new programs that are here for the stimulus. Is that possible?
Well, I'm just confused because you said we only spent 5% of the money for the new program.
Your accountability document showed last year, if you look at the new programs promised under the budget, only 5% of the programs your government promised, as opposed to the continuation of previous ones, actually were spent. So Building Canada Fund, borders, and so on. We discussed this in the previous committee, Minister, and I'm not the least bit offended that you don't remember, but it is what your accountability document shows. If you separate that out.
The new programs are effective 09-10 fiscal year, so obviously we couldn't spend. It would be zero.
No, Building Canada Fund had a 2008, 2009, and you spent either nothing or $300 million of it was supposed to be
When you say the
$2
new
billion
programs, you
outlay.
mean the old programs like the Building Canada?
The ones you announced in 2007 budget, and because of that fact that they were underspent, you've made announcements, and could we see the difference?
We'd certainly anything we have on the shelf, we'd certainly be happy to provide to the committee.
But again, Mr. Minister, I think I'm asking for a reasonable accountability here, which is how much money have you promised? How much money is actually is tied down with actual agreements, because there is a big difference we found, and second, and then finally, how many projects are actually underway? Because I think that's a delivery, an actual accomplishment. So, Minister, I just want to ask this question: are you saying you can't or won't provide that?
Everything we've got 13 agreements with every province and territory under Building Canada. I think most of them now we've got federal, provincial, territorial base funding. Agreements, anything, the
actual projects, Mr. Minister, are you prepared to provide us the detailed actual project lists?
We're certainly pleased to get you everything we have on the shelf. I'm not going to take people off the job ahead of the June deadline, but we'd be very pleased to provide you everything that we have available.
Monsieur Gaudet.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Minister, during one of the last appearances before a committee, you talked about one-third funding. Some of the smaller municipalities have less money. Perhaps you could offer them 50% of funding, with the provincial government making up 35% and the municipalities themselves 10%. So that's the question I asked you. And I asked an economist who told me that for the one-third, the government received in taxes 18% of the 35% it gave, and the provincial government received 17% of its third funding. So I'm not sure whether this is a suggestion or not, but perhaps you could change the tax regime. Rather being one-third, it could be 40-40-20 or 50-35-15 to help those smaller municipalities. Because don't forget, it's always the same people who pay, whether it is for loans from the provincial, federal, or municipalities. It's always the same people who pay.
For example, Newfoundland, Ontario, British Columbia are paying more than their third. Because it's a provincial jurisdiction, and we respect provincial jurisdiction. On respecte la compétence provinciale. Je vais d'autres aussi.
We respect provincial jurisdiction. I also want to point out that I'm certain that we've received requests for greater amounts where the municipalities had more than one-third, where they were ready to act with their part of the funding in areas of provincial jurisdiction, where when provinces pay more than their share, we respect that. But my mandate is to create the greatest number of jobs possible. Of course, the federal government doesn't have all the money, because and we've had to create a deficit in order to generate that funding. But we've provided for funding for such projects. And these are examples where we try to work with municipalities. But I must say that there are a large number of small municipalities across Canada who are ready to invest their third. And for those who do not have one-third, well, there's a GST rebate, and there are the gas tax rebate, and there are other funds available through other government agencies. So there are a number of ways for them to come up with that funding. And as I indicated, in British Columbia or in Newfoundland, municipalities under 15,000 inhabitants, well, the provincial government is ready to step up and do more.
Merci.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bevington.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just going back to the northern and rural communities that have capacity challenges, funding limitation, limited construction season. We need the economic stimulus as well throughout those regions. wouldn't you consider that we should look at a special stimulus fund that could aid these communities right across the whole country in making sure that they get a proportion of the stimulus funding that is going out at this time?
I'll tell you, our big cities, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Vancouver, are tremendously important. Big municipalities have huge needs. But I can tell you and underline the fact that small municipalities, rural Canada, northern Canada, have important needs as well. And we are very committed to ensure that there's an equitable distribution of funds. I can tell you when it comes to the north, I will put our Prime Minister's record with respect to infrastructure in northern Canada up against anyone, any government at any time in this country's history. You know,
then
he
maybe
followed the leadership John Diefenbaker did, and I think any independent analysis would say that up north there is so much infrastructure money they can't spend it fast enough.
Well, okay, then perhaps then you could take a look at the Mackenzie Valley Highway, which is a project that is really required in northern Canada. And would you consider investing in the development of that highway, say perhaps with a project that is shovel-ready like the Bear River Bridge?
Well, you know, we want to make an equitable distribution of resources. I think if you look, the North has got certainly more than an equitable share. It's worth investing in. It's important. It's a priority for the Prime Minister. It's a priority for me. I think when you look at the infrastructure spending that we're doing in the three territories particularly, it'll compare very favorably. You know, I have Premier Fenty lobbying hard for a green infrastructure project. They had a great project that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce air pollution with the electricity grid in the Yukon. I think if you look at what we're doing in the Northwest Territories on infrastructure, I'm meeting with the Minister, I think later this week or next. We have a great relationship with Premier Rowland. If you look at the new government in Nunavut is moving aggressively. I do appreciate not just the construction season being shorter, but also that you obviously have to get the materials there and different forms of transport, and we'll obviously take a common sense approach to dealing with any specific concerns.
Thank you, Minister, both ministers, for attending today with your staff, and appreciate all the input you've given us today. I think we're just going to take a brief 2-minute break while our guests depart, and then I just have a question in regards to Thursday's meeting. Recess for 2. too, just so you know. Thank you, and we're just back very briefly. I want to just quickly review the upcoming schedule. I do know that there are some committees that are not meeting on Thursday to allow members to travel to their national convention. I'm looking for direction for this committee for the Thursday meeting. We do have witnesses that have been contacted. We're waiting to advise them. They will come Thursday. They will come another day if we so choose. So I just put that out there. The will of the committee. Any thoughts?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I think we should hear from Mr. Volpe and his position on it first.
Okay. Well, I thank the parliamentary secretary for reverting back to type. He got a little uptight at the last intervention, and it probably happened because he thought the minister couldn't handle the things on his own. You know, entering into a partisan political debate and then, you know, relying on parliamentary secretaries. Now, Monsieur Laframboise, you know that that's what parliamentary secretaries do, so we give him our benediction, but he shouldn't do it anymore. Anyway, look, I thank the committee for even thinking about this for a moment or two. We have a convention in Vancouver, and I think some people have, and other committees have looked at it and said, you know, maybe to facilitate the travel of others, we should put the meeting off to a subsequent date. I'm in the enviable position of being able to be here on Thursday, in as much as my duties call for my presence physically. So if you guys want to meet and just talk to me, that's great. But in the interests of my other colleagues, if the rest of you are amenable, then sure, we'd welcome your flexibility in turning Thursday into a research day for the entire committee as the rest of these groups go out and the rest of the group goes out and does what constitutionally allows them to represent other parties and citizens.
Comments? Mr. Dhaliwal?
Well, I thank the government members for their input. In fact, you know, I'm willing to be here on Thursday as well, as Mr. Volpe said, but certainly if it's the will of the committee, we would thank the other members as well.
I have Monsieur Laframboise and then Mr. Jean.
Well, first of all, if all Liberal members can be here, I have no problems either. If you can all be here, well, we'll hold the committee meeting. But I have no objections otherwise. I understand when parties have their conventions, there's always provisions that are taken. I have no problems with not holding the meeting on Thursday. But I would like to end by saying that we have a very good parliamentary secretary. I remember the Liberal parliamentary secretaries at the time, and you're doing good work, Jean.
Mr. Bevington and Mr. Jean. Mr. Jean.
I would like to say we have a very good parliamentary secretary here as well, but in all seriousness, Mr. Volpe, with respect, I've always admired your work greatly, but I had a hard time keeping up with you and Mr. Kennedy in relation to the question answers of the ministers, and maybe that's because I'm a little slower than the rest of you, but I really did have difficulty following the line of questioning and understanding what was the point. I would like to say, though, if you're prepared to be here, I'm prepared to be here. I'd like to get this next bill out. I would like to work, hear the witnesses, and get it done as quickly as possible, and I think with you, with all members being present, and I think especially given regard to the bill itself and and the possibility of having it through the House at the next week, I think we should meet and hear the witnesses and get this job done.
Mr. Bevington?
Well, I'll only deal with one matter here, and that's not the parliamentary secretary. But I think that if I sense some urgency in having to cancel this meeting, I'd be fine with it. I really rely on my Liberal colleagues in identifying that. If not, we can continue with the business because, of course, there's one thing I have learned on this Transport Committee is there's a great volume of work to be done, and there isn't, a great amount of meeting time. So if our Liberal members are fine with that, that's good. If they feel some urgency in having to leave, then I would support them doing it.
I think, having heard all the comments, I think we'll proceed with the meeting on Thursday then, and we will have the Tourism Association, the Canadian Maritime Law Association, and Wilderness Tours, and then we will hopefully be looking at clause by clause on May 5th. If that's suitable to everybody, then I'll see you on Thursday. Meeting adjourned.